"Is that it?" Zianya asked, staring at the nondescript two-story building at the end of the street, and I nodded from the front passenger's seat, which had been unofficially labeled as mine, both because it was the easiest for me to get in and out of, and because I was the most human-looking of us, thus the least likely to be noticed through the windshield or the transparent front windows. Poor Eric's always had to sit on the floor in the cargo area, in the very back. There was nothing a hat or a pair of sunglasses could do to disguise a bull's head. "There's a parking lot around back," Gallagher said from the bench seat behind me. Claudio sat on his left, which left the third row open for Miri and Lala, assuming our mission was successful. Zianya drove past the lab, then took us around the block, where she pulled into the lot from an adjacent street and parked on the last row. We were a little early because we wanted to see the lab's weekend employees leave, and any night shift security or custodial employees arrive. "Are there cameras?" Claudio leaned forward to study the back of the building through the windshield. At his feet sat a backpack stuffed with supplies we, or the captured oracles, might need. "Obviously we haven't been inside, but there's one by the main entrance and one out back, aimed at the dumpster," Gallagher told him. "That's what the paint's for." I held up the spray bottle of Midnight Madness. We waited, watching the building until the lights went off, and a couple of people left through the back door and got into cars near the front of the lot. A few minutes later, a third man in a white coat came out. He tossed a large trash bag into the bin, then got into his car and drove away without even a glance in our direction. When the last of the light had faded from the western horizon and the parking lot lights had come on, Zianya restarted the van and drove across the lot, where she pulled into the space closest to the dumpster, using it to block us from sight of the camera over the back door. I handed Gallagher the can of black spray paint, and he got out of the van. Within 2 steps, he'd blended in with the darkness so well that I could no longer see him. A minute later, he reemerged from the shadows around the huge trash bin and waved the rest of us forward with one finger pressed to his lips. We filed out of the van as quietly as we could and rounded the dumpster just as Gallagher twisted the back door's knob so hard and fast that the lock snapped. Yet the door remained closed. So he pulled, hard, and metal groaned as the deadbolt ripped free, warping the frame. The door swung open, revealing an unlit back hallway tiled in sterile white. Several doors lined the hall, spaced far apart and labeled with thin plastic plaques on the wall. Halfway down, another hallway bisected the first one at a 90-degree angle. "2 groups," Gallagher whispered. "We'll take the right side." He gestured to me and Zianya, which left Eric's and Claudio in the other group. "You take the left. Be quiet and on alert. If you find any security or custodial staff, disable them as quietly as possible and come find us." Eric's nodded. Then he gave the first doorknob on the left side of the hall a fierce twist. Something snapped, and the door swung open. Gallagher broke open the first door on the right side. Then he took a single step into the darkened room. I could tell from his stiff posture that he was scanning for threats with eyes that could see much better in the dark than mine could. From within the room came a soft, shuffling sound that could have been anything from boots against carpet to wings unfolding. I heard a soft snort, then a whine, but Gallagher's posture registered no threat. When he'd decided the room was safe, he flipped on the lights and stood back to let us in, while the soft chorus of shuffles and unidentifiable sounds swelled. The fluorescent lights were still warming up to their true brightness when I stepped into the room, and the momentary flicker deepened the ominous feel of the space full of sterile tables and animal cages. "Oh my God," I whispered as I glanced over walls lined in waist-tall cages, stacked 2 high all over the room. Returning my gaze through wire mesh pens were young 9-tailed foxes, griffin kittens, and several infant multi-headed Cerberian hounds, more commonly known as hellhounds. They were each small enough to fit into 3-foot-tall cages, sometimes 2 to a pen, and too young to be dangerous, beyond biting in self-defense. "They're experimenting on hybrids. On babies. On infants of the cryptid beast category not protected by the ASPCA because they were combinations of 2 or more biological classes, rather than the more closely related natural genus or species hybrids like the liger or mule." Zianya gave me a skeptical look. "Why does that surprise you? They've been putting our babies in cages for decades. Why would you think they'd have any more empathy for creatures without a human face?